Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Mastermind. I'm Hillary Russell, and today I have an exciting guest for you to meet, Donnie Angel. Donnie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I am so thrilled to have you here. So Donnie is a good friend of mine and an incredible influencer coach. Donnie, I'm going to give you a few minutes and give you the floor to introduce yourself because you can do a lot better job than I will be able to.
Okay. Well, I am somebody who is very, very passionate about, two main things. Number one is bringing the unconscious to the conscious. So much of what we do and how we live our life is subconscious. I'm all about kind of grabbing that and bringing it up to the conscious mind so that with that awareness, we can start guiding things towards what we actually want. So that really brings up the second thing I'm passionate about, which is understanding ourselves and honoring that, especially in business.
Oh.
So I work largely with entrepreneurs. I am an entrepreneur to the core of my being, and was selling my dad's art to neighbors when I was 7 years old. Sorry, Dad, I don't even know if he knew about it. My dad is an amazing artist, but I would sneak his doodles that he would do and go knock on our neighbors' doors and sell his art to the neighbors.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. It's just in me. It lives in me, and I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. But I particularly love working with people who are going to take their knowledge and change the world.
That's awesome.
Right? The change makers, the way showers, those are the people that are going to learn about themselves, honor what they learn, and use it to change the world. Yeah. So that's the work I do. And I, do it through one-on-one sessions, retreats, workshops, classes, online stuff. And I've been doing it for a very long time.
Yes, that is so awesome and so powerful too. I think that, so for the Digital Mastermind, our entire audience are entrepreneurs that are wanting to improve themselves and their business. And so I think this is a very important topic, right? What you mentioned, being so passionate about the core values of individuals as themselves and coming into who they truly are. I think in the entrepreneurial world, that's such an important thing that is often, it's briefly brought up like, okay, you got to figure out your purpose, you got to figure out your why, but that's about it. That's about the depth of what it gets into.
Absolutely. So when people ask me, like, what's the main thing you do? It really is my work with core values. And it's funny, I've been looking for another terminology for this because I do think it sounds really kind of sterile and boring, and it is not.
Right.
It is everything. So I've been doing this work for 19 years and came across core values 12 years ago. What I mean by that is I was in a huge, epic fight with my ex-husband.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell this quick story. My poor ex-husband. He ends up being like all the stuff I do.
It was a learning experience.
It was a very, very huge learning experience, and I so appreciate it. It was like getting a PhD.
I love it.
So this was about 12 years ago. And I have a daughter who is 13 and a half, so she was just a toddler.
Okay.
And my ex-husband and I were not getting along very well. And he said, I'm so miserable in this relationship. And so I did the thing that a lot of us do where I started listing my virtues.
Okay.
I, have dinner on the table every night. The house is spotless. I do all the shopping. I take care of the kids. I just started listing all the things I was doing. And this moment changed my life. And it's so funny because you never know what moment is going to shift everything for you.
Very true.
And he's a big, burly, biker guy kind of guy. And he just got so big and he screamed and he said, and I would trade all of it for some security.
Interesting.
And it just stopped me in my tracks. And it was one of those moments where you kind of take a picture And I'm like, I'll come back to that when I'm not so totally pissed and hurt. So we finished our fight. The next day, I couldn't get that sentence out of my head.
Yeah.
Wait, he would trade all of it, all these things I'm doing. And trust me, I listed like 30 things, and he would trade all of it for some security. And so I came later, should have done it right away, but came later and I said, what does security mean to you? Right? That's a broad word. And you could get 10 people in a room and security is going to mean something different to all of them. And as he listed the things that security meant to him, I actually knew in that moment I would never be able to fulfill on that.
Interesting.
One of them was for me to work a W-2 job.
Oh.
So it turns out I'm psychologically unemployable.
Not a W-2er.
Not a W-2er. Just the thought of someone telling me like when I could eat lunch or go. No. I didn't even do well with that in school. You know, it's like, oh, we got to come to an understanding, teacher. Right. I do what I want. Right. And those of you that are listening to this that are entrepreneurs, y'all know exactly what I mean.
Feel that
when I say psychologically unemployable. And as he continued to sort of express what security meant to him, I was sad because I knew A, he wasn't getting a really deep need met, and B, I knew I couldn't meet that need.
Right.
So, you know, in a way, it was kind of the beginning of the end, but also the beginning of this work I've been doing ever since, of how deep it goes. So I do want to say, we're not talking about superficial core values. I call it what lives in your bones. So we're born with our core values.
Okay. Not something that's nurtured.
Not something that is, it's not, you know, we all have wounds and belief systems and issues that are trauma-based or maybe even inherited. Core values are born in us, and we die with the same core values. They will have different expressions throughout our lifetime. The example I give here is my son, Boston, who is almost 26. When he was little, and I mean really little, he refused to, well, be told what to do.
Okay.
And he would not let me put him in his car seat. So he had to get in his car seat by himself, buckle it by himself, get dressed by himself every day, choose his own clothes. He was, and his number one core value is sovereignty.
Oh, okay.
So now, as, you know, a grown man, you know, he doesn't throw a fit about getting buckled into his car seat, but it has a different expression, but he is extremely sovereign.
Interesting.
He is uncontrollable in that way. No one can tell him what to do. He owns his own body, his own mind, his own spirit. He belongs to himself. And I just look at him now and I'm like, that is the same child. So especially for those of you who have children and more than one child, and you see how different they are from day one.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Like, I've really had to learn not to take credit or blame for my 4 children. They're very unique, and they have cared about those same things. So I like to speak to it as 3, like top 3 core values. Obviously, we all have many things that we value in life.
Right.
But I like to keep it there for simplicity. But as I'm talking, I want you all to just remember and be looking for in yourself, what have you cared about since you were a little child? So you probably don't remember being 1, but, you know, what did you care about in kindergarten, first grade? So as you're thinking about them, run them through that test of what you were like when you were little. And again, acknowledging that the expression is going to be different.
Right. Yeah, that's a really interesting piece, because I think that in a lot of like personal development and things like that, you know, they always talk about, okay, find your why, find, you know, the baseline of the purpose behind why you're doing these things. But it takes a whole new spin on it to say, okay, what are the things that you've always been? What have you always been, and what correlates to that? So in this work that you do, in helping people and individuals and entrepreneurs to find these core values and these driving forces, essentially, I think I have two questions. Okay. Honestly, I think one, where is the point that an individual needs to be at to really take full advantage of understanding their core values?
Love that question.
And then the second one, how can someone who has never even explored this area, how can they start to be more aware or to acknowledge these more freely?
Okay, excellent question. So to answer the first one, core values are part of our flourishing life. They're really a piece of thriving.
Okay.
So if you want to take full advantage of them, you have to get out of survival mode.
Okay.
And I mean, that's kind of a whole different podcast in and of itself, but I call it the prerequisite. So before we can really fully start to engage and fulfill on our core values, we need to make sure the basics are met. So it would go back to the idea of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that base of the pyramid: food, shelter, water, air, connection to a certain degree, which is going to be different for every person.
Right.
And then here's a really interesting thing I've seen over all these years of doing this work. For some people, there's something else there that is maybe different than anyone else. So for example, for me, freedom is part of the core. I'm talking like survival need.
Right. Okay.
So if I don't feel free, it's like food and air and water to me. For somebody else, that might be a certain type of safety, right? We all have kind of different things that go there, but those are all prerequisites that it's like once those are handled, it's that feeling where you go, okay, in general, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm not fantastic. I'm not necessarily flourishing in every area of life, but I'm good.
Right.
Right? Once that is handled, then we have a beautiful opportunity to see what it is that holds meaning for us. So meaning in life is above survival mode.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you take people and keep them in survival mode in some way, there's never full satisfaction. We are not meant to just survive. We are meant to thrive. And so core values, to me, are the formula for thriving.
Okay.
So I'm going to, just to kind of make it a little more real world, let's say you're someone who is in an abusive relationship and you never feel safe. It's going to be very difficult for you to move into having all your core values fulfilled, because you're just going to spend your life and all that time trying to survive that situation. Or a job you hate, like you dread, right? It's going to keep you in survival mode.
That makes sense.
So when I'm working with clients, the first thing I'm looking for, and this doesn't happen very often, I would say at the level I'm working now, if that,
yeah.
But first thing I need to do is help them get out of any of that survival mode, fear, right? Or our deep unwellness.
Right. That makes sense.
Is we have actually, as a society, we have normalized chronic unwellness.
Yes.
And chronic dissatisfaction. We barely have templates of what it looks like for someone to be truly flourishing in every area of life.
That's so true.
Like, that's the game I'm playing, right? Both for myself and for my clients and the people I love. Like, where do we flourish in every single area of life? And I guarantee some of you listening to this are saying, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Well, you've been conditioned and programmed to believe that, and you have inherited a world where you are told that your ability to flourish in every area of life is not possible. And I'm here to tell you that 100% it is possible.
That's powerful. I think that's very true, and you're right. I think that we are so conditioned to believe that it has to be a certain way, or that unhappiness or complacency even is just normal.
Think
That's
about
just...
the messages. You don't always get what you want.
Yep.
I mean, and we could go on and on saying all of the things we've been told.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like there's an idea that you're ungrateful or greedy.
Yes.
If you want all of it. And I'm over here unapologetically being like, I'm greedy as hell.
I love that.
You know,
Yeah.
I have no problem admitting I'm here for all of it.
Right.
Not in a way where it takes from anyone else, but the better off I am,
Mm-hmm.
the healthier, the wealthier, the happier, the more bandwidth I have to serve. My clients wouldn't want to come to me when they're unwell if I'm unwell.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So that leads directly to the second question of, all right, you know, you get to this point where you're like, okay, I need to figure out what these core values are for myself. How do you help someone who is new to this world start
Yes.
to see and recognize those things in themselves?
So usually it's through examples. We typically learn quickest
Mm-hmm.
through real life examples of this is the type of thing I'm talking about. So I want to first of all set a little bit more of the scaffolding.
Yes.
So our core values, meaning the things we value most, are also our core needs, okay? Our core desires, our core incentives.
Ooh.
And when we're talking about business and how your core values inform your business, really, we're going to come back to that one, but I want you to really understand they're your core incentives. And then the highest of the pyramid of these is they are actually what you are bringing to the planet.
So that's huge.
It's, you guys, it's everything. There's so much work I've done and so many things I've studied. Everything from archetypes is another big thing I do. You know, Enneagram work, personality traits. I could go on and on. Nothing has changed my life like this. The reason I'm so passionate about this core values work is when I got it and I understood mine, my life changed practically overnight. Nothing I've done in an entire lifetime of seeking, studying, as a very weird child who nerded out about this kind of stuff and started really deep diving into how human beings work, how the world works, spirituality at 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
So this is my life's work, and nothing even comes close. Nothing comes close to what core values, understanding your own core values does for your life.
Oh my gosh. That makes me so curious and like almost like this yearning, like, okay, well, I need to understand what mine are now, you know?
Yes. Okay. So keeping that in mind, that we got to start with understanding what they are.
Mm-hmm.
So usually where I go with this is not from a place of any kind of ego, but from a place of example is I share mine.
Okay.
So people can start to get what I even mean by core values. So for me, my number one core value is workability. Every core value you have is going to be a world in and of itself. So if you picture, here's mine, let's picture a little planet and it says workability at the top. What does workability mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
Will fill in those blanks. So flow in my day, ease, order, time working.
Yeah.
Knowing where everything is at any point of the day. If my ex-husband calls and says, I need to see our taxes from 2008, it's literally a 1 second thing. I know exactly where they are. And it's not because I'm obsessed with organization. Organization serves workability to me.
Okay.
Right? It's so that there's not a sticky part of my day that ruins everything else.
Right.
And if I look at my life and I look at being a kid, So I'm the oldest of 8. And I remember begging for my own room so that I could keep it clean and organized.
Oh.
Because I couldn't make my life work otherwise. And I just felt unwell. So when your core values are not being met, you do feel unwell, especially your number 1. It's kind of like everything hinges on it. So when I know for myself what workability means to me, and I'll tell you, it took me a long time to fully claim that that was my number 1. So when I originally saw these, I thought my number 1 was connection.
Oh, okay.
Everyone who knows me knows me as a connector. I know a lot of people. I love people. Yet my life was a testament that workability always comes first.
Okay.
So it was hard for me to claim, which I want to say is often very common with your number 1, because you'd kind of judge it. I thought, well, first of all, that's a boring core value. Workability. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it almost seemed a little bit superficial to me. And yet it's also almost vulnerable to talk about your number 1 because it does mean so much. Even now, just thinking about it, when my workability is hit against or threatened in some way, nothing else, everything stops. Everything in my life stops. Now, if connection was my number 1, and for, one of these listeners, they're like, I think connection might be my number 1. When you're not getting that connection, you're not well. So let's say you're in a fight with your spouse, right? Let's say that your best friend is mad at you. You feel disconnected in some way, you're gonna want to stop everything until that is handled. Just like I want to stop everything when my life's not working.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then my number 2 is connection. To me, connection means certain things. And so my husband's name is Gideon. And for the first couple years of our relationship, I was constantly asking for more quality time. That's my love language. And finally, we argued about it quite a bit. And it was really one of the only things we argued about. I want a date night. I want that quality time. So a little over a year ago, we had an experience where he got really frustrated with me. And he said, look, I know connection is a core value to you. And I get that. You keep saying you want more, but we're together all the time. And he said, in fact, we were together every night this week. I said, with other people? And he goes, wait, hold on a second. It doesn't count if we're with other people? And I'm like, no, it only counts if it's just the 2 of us. We're not distracted by our phones. There's some kind of physical touch and deep conversation. And he said, that would have been really good to know 4 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh, I teach this stuff. What am I doing?
That is
right?
so funny.
So it's like, for me, a big piece of connection is presence. I want this, right? This is why I still do one-on-ones.
Right.
Because even though it's fairly exhausting to keep doing them all the time, that one-on-one, in-person, present thing, it means everything to me. I didn't stop doing my work during COVID. I was like, no, I will keep doing this for the people who are willing, because it's that important to me.
Yeah.
I will say we really saw people's core values come out. During COVID. It almost forced you to claim what really matters to you. And I saw that connection mattered to me more than a fear of getting sick.
Interesting. Wow.
That's how deep it goes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right. So almost like the things in your life that uphold everything else, that Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it makes me curious too, because I know we have a lot of similarities.
Yes, we do.
But as you're talking about, workability and like autonomy and things like that, I'm like, yes. Like,
well, so many people have asked me, like, Donnie, how is freedom or sovereignty or autonomy or independence not in your top 3? Again, for me, that's back in the prerequisite.
Okay.
I can't live life without it. Okay. Yeah. So that's the reason it's not in my top 3. So I know this kind of gets a little tricky, and we're trying to take a huge concept and give some information in one podcast episode. And I have a tendency to want to give all of it. So I apologize if this is a fire hose. Every time with me is a fire hose.
It's good. I love it.
I can't help it. So again, coming back to knowing what that word means to you and the world that it symbolizes, so that can be communicated to yourself, obviously, but also to the people closest to you. You can't just say some broad word. Oh, I care about freedom. But you got to say, and this is what that means to me. And as specific as possible, especially to your partner, your best friend, your children, your parents, your core people. So my number 3 is legacy. And to me, legacy means, right, my family, not just in front of me, but behind me. So I've always loved genealogy. I study my relatives quite a bit. My grandparents, I was very blessed to have all 4 of my grandparents alive till I was 45 years old. And I saw them all the time, took care of them at the end of their lives. I have 41 nieces and nephews, and they're my babies, and they know it. Shout out to my nieces and nephews. They mean so much to me. I'm not going to miss a wedding or a play, or, do you know? I have 2 nieces graduating next week, and I got their gifts, and and I'm so proud of them, and I did their senior pictures for them, and we both do photography also. And so what I've noticed with your number 3 is that it's the thing that you give up when your life's not working very well.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have the bandwidth for legacy when I didn't have workability and connection. But you guys, this is not something I'm making up. I didn't choose, I don't remember choosing these core values.
Right.
Even as a little child, I was like this. So we don't get to just say, these would be cool core values to have.
Right.
Like I have a friend, and one of hers is health. I wish.
Yeah, that's definitely not mine.
Then my body would look as good as my house does. Right? But it's so if you really want to put these against someone who knows you.
Right.
Because they might say like, I don't know about that.
Right.
Right? Oh, my core value is connection, and you haven't left your house for 2 years. They're like,
probably not.
Yeah. Probably not. So your life will be literally a testament. When I started sharing with people that my number 1 core value was workability, they were like, no duh.
Makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And they all have a shadow. So, shadow of workability. I was OCD all through my 20s and 30s.
Okay.
Rigid. Freaked out if plans changed. Right? Shadow of connection can be codependency, seeking out inappropriate connection, kind of like being needy in that way. The shadow of legacy is really interesting because I put my family of origin over my ex-husband a lot, actually. I'm someone who's kind of obsessed with my own family line.
Right.
And that can be out of balance. So any of these core values can be out of balance. So let's do this. So now you kind of get an idea of what I mean by core values. Somebody will say, like for instance, reciprocity is something that matters deeply to me, but that's part of workability and part of connection. So for me, if there's not reciprocity, it's not sustainable. I can't just keep giving without receiving. So it hits against workability. But it also hits against connection, because if I'm not receiving back, I don't feel connected.
Right.
So it's more of a you can really think of your 3 words, and then almost everything you value is in one of those worlds.
Right.
But this is a quick way to think about it. So let's do this. Tell me something you think might be one of your core values.
I definitely think autonomy or workability is one of my top.
Okay, let's talk about autonomy.
Okay.
Because some of these are going to be shades of meaning. So freedom, independence, sovereignty, and autonomy all are in the same realm, but they mean slightly different things.
Okay.
So autonomy typically is about you owning your time, your schedule, right?
Right.
Kind of your external world. Sovereignty is a little more about owning your internal world. Now, I will say, they can be part of it. So your word can be, so for my husband, sovereignty is his number 2, but autonomy is in his world of that.
Okay.
So if you say autonomy, what does that mean to you?
My external world.
Okay.
Definitely.
So
yes.
Describe that to me.
So having full control over my schedule, the things that I'm doing, that I'm involved in, choosing the projects that I spend my time in, not being controlled by a 9-to-5 job, really being able to spend as much time as I can with the people that I love.
Okay.
And having that freedom to do that.
Okay. So that is absolutely autonomy.
Perfect.
Right? So thinking about that, how easy is that for you to claim? Is it pretty easy? You just know that about yourself?
Yeah, it hasn't always been. In the corporate world, that was something that was very difficult for me before I, went off on my own, entrepreneurial journey. But now it is very easy for me to claim.
Okay. So I just want to point out, usually the first one a person comes up with is their number 2.
Okay.
A lot of times what we think is our number 1 is our number 2 because it's the obvious one. Usually when someone's talking about their number 1, there's a feeling of like either resistance, vulnerability. It goes so deep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not necessarily true. Your number 1 may be autonomy, but let's talk about it for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what is it that you would give up autonomy for if you had to?
The ability to help others grow.
Okay. Tell me more about that. And what I'm listening for, you guys, is I'm listening for certain vibes, certain energies, certain words.
Yeah.
Okay. Help others grow. Tell me what that means to you.
So I would, and I have given up autonomy for the ability to impact other people's lives and help them find success and to find more clarity in their own lives and help them become more of who they want to truly be. So the ability to teach and to help others find, their true passions. There's been a lot of situations in my life that I've given up autonomy for the ability to do that.
Okay. Ooh, this is good stuff. I live for this, in case you can't tell. I want to say 2 things. Number 1, if autonomy was Hillary's number 1, she would have said, I don't give anything up for it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right? Because I'm the same way. I give up connection for workability. If Gideon comes home and I'm in the middle of something, I'm going to finish that thing before he gets a hug and a kiss.
Right.
And I don't necessarily love that about myself. Nevertheless,
it's part of it.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So as you're speaking, and what's frustrating to me is I can't necessarily teach this part of what I do. So I'm very intuitive. So I used to work as a full-time psychic. I just was born this way, and I've spent a lifetime honing it. You said one word, that when you said it, my whole body reacted. Now, many of you listening are also intuitive. Even right now, as I'm about to say it, my whole body has chills. That word was impact.
Yes, that's a big word for me.
Do you see, if you look at the different places in your life, that's what runs the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me how you feel thinking about that word.
Yeah, I think for me, and what I've associated it to is growth, but also to help promote or impact that growth for other people. And just the ability to almost spread the energy of, or the vibrational energy of success and of, helping others to come out of their complacency or to come out of their stuckness, if you will.
So this is your world.
Right.
If this world says impact at the top, these are all the things that fills that in. And if you're, again, you guys, core values are so individual, it's like a fingerprint. You could be in a room with 10, 100, 1,000 other people who have impact as their number one core value, but it's going to mean something different to every single person.
That's cool.
So if you know this about yourself and you really, really get it, you can make your choices and filter everything through that.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? You go,
Yeah.
oh, here's this amazing opportunity. And you're like, hold on a second. Do I have impact there?
Mm-hmm.
And do I have autonomy there?
Right.
Because otherwise, sometimes we aren't thinking with the correct filter. And how many times have we said yes to opportunities, jobs, marriages, trips, even, right? You're going to go on a week-long trip,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not going to have any autonomy on it. You're going to hate it.
Right.
So let's get to your number 3.
Okay.
So you think about impact and autonomy, and our number 1 and number 2 are so big that we're kind of like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good now.
I know. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it would be.
But the
food.
number,
like,
well, I mean, it is like a core value can be, when people say food, I'm like, that could be comfort. That could be experiences. That could be, so let's do this for your number 3. I'm going to read a list.
Okay.
And I think that probably the listeners would appreciate
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening at home, and don't worry about me, I still write everything down on actual paper. Okay? Don't judge me. Actually, I don't care if you do judge me. So as you are hearing this, Hillary, and as you listeners are hearing this, write down anything, or in your case, just think about anything that hits, like,
Okay.
oh, that word means something to me. So, connection, intimacy, love, workability, order, peace, comfort, roots, belonging, security, stability, validation, creativity, creating, building, knowledge, freedom, sovereignty, autonomy, independence, movement, nature, courage, honesty, respect, appreciation, service, integrity, adventure, experiences, novelty, balance, growth, justice, communication, strength, legacy, play, fun, spirituality, excitement, transparency, relaxation, authenticity, health, discovery, partnership, beingness, presence, magic, expansiveness, acceptance, opportunity, and exploration.
Ooh.
Now, I will say, obviously, that's not a comprehensive list, but these are the top ones I've seen.
Okay.
It could be anything, but you don't want to have it be too general. If someone says money or family, we're going to go deeper.
Right.
To see what about that. So I'm curious because I got a hit on one of these. So let's see what came. Actually, there were two that I got a hit on.
Okay. So the one that just immediately made me like happy was creativity.
So that was one of the two.
Yeah.
So the two that came up as a hit for you was stability and creativity.
Yep. Yeah. So stability, and also when you said security, that means the same thing to me. So
Okay.
Stability and security, and creativity is like for sure the other thing that's important to me.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Tell me what you mean by stability. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so stability for me means that it's actually funny because I think that stability almost in my world has a sense of the unknown. Like that there's almost like this sense of just knowing that everything happens for a reason and trusting that is stability to me.
Okay.
And the people in my life that are closest to me have that deep belief as well, and have very like optimistic outlooks almost.
You are
right?
such a Gemini.
Right? I know.
Everything you're saying, I'm like,
such a Gemini.
Such a Gemini.
But yeah, I know, very similar.
Yeah.
So I think that's what stability means to me, is just, and it's funny too, because it actually kind of falls under autonomy for me, is the ability to create whatever it is that I am envisioning at that point in my life. Like that's stability to me.
Okay.
That's like the ability to just like thrive and not be held back by other things.
Okay. Tell me about creativity.
Creativity is the fuel to that. So creativity to me is just having free reign to think, brainstorm, and materialize these concepts or these business ideas. My creative mind is very business-like. So, you know, I get very excited and motivated, and I have clients that can attest to this, that I go on for hours sometimes, you know, talking about organizational processes and methodology and like marketing processes for businesses to help them grow, and processes that are very unique that other people haven't even tried or that may seem off the wall, right? That's creative to me. That's doing things that others wouldn't do or would be scared to do, and doing it with passion and freely, and just doing it wholeheartedly, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. So there's a couple clarifying questions here. So for you, if you don't have any impact and you don't have any autonomy, does it mess with your creativity?
Yes. That's when the shadow that I recognize comes in, procrastination, flakiness, like that starts coming up, and I'm like, I don't want to touch it.
Okay. So, and again, it's funny, whenever I do one of these, I always try to keep it super like professional, and yet my company is called The Practical Mystic. I can't take away the intuitive piece. So here's what I think. First of all, the whole time we're talking about creativity, my whole body's tingling, right? It's like, yes, yes, right? But it's really your energy that tells me that. So you asked the question, how do you know? How do you start being aware? You gotta pay attention to what's happening in your body. Our minds are crazy. Like, we will second guess, doubt, overthink, overanalyze till the cows come home. We gotta listen to what's happening and notice what's happening in our body. Sometimes I'll say a word and people will tear up. And then I'm like, hey, hello. Do you feel that?
Right.
That's it. What I think it is that it is creativity is your number 3. And the number 3 is what kind of brings that sweetness to life. But it is the thing we will give up when we're not well. Whereas like our number 1, we kind of can't give it up, so we tend to go into the shadow with it.
Right.
Rather than give it up. what I think is that when you have impact and autonomy and creativity, the thread, so there's a thread that goes through everyone's, and that thread to me is stability.
Oh, yes, that makes sense.
So for me, with mine, the thread that goes through mine is expansiveness. When I have all three of mine, I feel ultimately and completely expansive. And what I'm getting is that when you have all three of those, you feel ultimately stable.
Yes, definitely.
So do you see, you guys, we've got the prerequisites, the survival prerequisites. We've got the core values. We've got the thread that goes to the core values. There is also another piece that maybe we can come back and do a part 2, which is our wound and how that can really hijack our core values.
Yeah.
But just this much understanding. So when you think about those three things, how much do they mean to you? How much are they you?
It's almost something that I can't even put into words, because it truly feels like something that is so, it's the piece of literally everything that I've done, every decision that I've made is driven by one of those things.
Core incentives.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Do you see? In the beginning of a conversation, it's like, meh, okay. But as you get to it, and this is why I called it what lives in your bones, it's inherent. It's inherently you. And the times of your life that you have not honored that, how has that been for you?
It feels dark. It feels constraining. Depressed, yes. Very
Tired.
depressive, anxiety-ridden. Yeah, it's definitely just, honestly, like a shell of who I am.
Yep. Absolutely. So, thinking about how big these are, once you not only are aware of yours, but you fully claim them, and you really parse out the worlds and what they mean to you, and communicate that, what happens is, especially with a spouse, a partner of some kind, is that they now get you. And one of the main reasons people leave relationships, and I've done so much relationship counseling over the years and training, is they don't feel gotten. You know that moment when somebody you've been with for a long time says something and you're like, you have no idea who I am.
Yes.
And it feels so unsafe and it feels so devastating, and you're like, I can't stay here. Now that's on a personal level, but that also happens in business. So when I talk to people about why they leave jobs or opportunities, right? Even with an entrepreneur who leaves a contract and says, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
It is largely because they don't feel understood. Now, they may not use those words, but as they're telling me, they're saying things like, do you know, I had this happen yesterday. Do you know that I've worked for this company for 23 years and I have never been acknowledged? Now, this is someone who acknowledgement's not their number one, otherwise they wouldn't still be there.
Right.
But it is their number 3. You see? So their number 1 is security. So
staying at the job.
Exactly, right? But their number 3 is acknowledgement, and it's not being met, and they are constantly looking for another job. Now, if their boss understood that, and it's a sentence here and there, oh my gosh, you're doing an amazing job. We couldn't do this without you.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That person's going to stay. Instead, they are really close to leaving. And what it's going to cost that company when they leave, they're making that company so much money right now. Just because they don't understand that person. So I do lots of different kinds of business trainings. By far, my favorite is to go into a business and train them on their own and other people's core values. Imagine the impact of, and by the way, when you know people's core values, you can speak in their language. Imagine the impact of having a whiteboard and having an owner, a CFO, and 8 managers in a room and diagramming out everyone's core values. Because if you know that Bob, who's in charge of marketing, values growth above everything else, guess what? You're going to look for seminars for him to go to that company's going to pay for. You're going to look for promotion opportunities for him. Right? But you know, Karen in HR values validation. Every time you're around, like, you know, even something as simple as a freaking Starbucks gift card.
Yeah.
Or, you know, a little card. You're amazing. Do you see? We are, and I see it all the time in companies, whether they're, you know, very, very small, 3 employees or 1,000 employees. Retention is everything.
Definitely.
What it costs a company to rehire and retrain because they don't understand their people. It blows my mind. If I were to own a company with a bunch of employees, the very first thing I do, I would have a folder on every single person that would be like, this is what holds meaning for this person.
Yeah.
And then I would fulfill on that. Not just to keep them as an employee, but because I care so much about people's wellness.
Right.
So that's in business. What about with your children?
Oh, that's huge.
It's huge. If I was to treat, so again, with Boston caring so much about sovereignty, if I say to Boston, hey, we're going on this family trip, but bud, you do not have to hang out with us. You do you. Keep your phone on you, and I'll call you when it's time for lunch. If I was to say that to my youngest, whose number 1 is love, which for her, belonging is part of that.
Yeah.
She would be like, you don't care about me at all.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
This is not a one size fits all. Understanding yours, your partner's, your children's, your best friend. I lost a really the most precious person in the whole world to me outside of my immediate family because I didn't understand her core value. And I didn't mean to, but something I said pushed against it so hard I lost the friendship.
Oh, wow.
That's how, you guys, this is huge. I could love somebody so much, but if they push against my workability all the time, that's a no for me.
Yeah.
Do you see? I mean, this is like essential. So bringing it back to business, if you are not honoring your own core values in how you're doing business, it's not sustainable. If you're not honoring the people's core values that you're working with, it's going to fall apart. But here's an even deeper piece. So tell me yours again in order.
So,
number 1.
impact.
Yes.
Workability and creativity.
Autonomy.
Autonomy.
So
okay.
a workability for you is part
of autonomy.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So impact, autonomy, and creativity. That's what you get paid for.
Very true.
Is that not what you bring the world?
Very true. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So think about what I get paid for. Workability, number 1. I make people's lives work. Number 2, connection.
Right.
Number 3, legacy. I just changed that family line.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
So, if you are not doing something where you are getting paid for your core values, y'all are off track.
That is such a awesome secret. Like,
I know.
It's like
Oh, you guys, you should have seen me the day I got it. Like,
right.
I really got it. I was like freaking out. Luckily, I was alone, so I was only crazy to myself. I'm a very expressed person.
That is so cool, though, because it makes so much sense. I mean, thinking back through my life, the most successful, in my mind, the most successful parts of my life have been when those 3 things are aligned.
Right?
Yes.
All of a sudden, The clients are there because guess what? You are embodying those.
Mm-hmm.
You are embodying those. So again, my company is called The Practical Mystic. I didn't make the correlation. And one of the things I really had a hard time with is claiming those two pieces of myself.
Yeah.
Whenever I try to be one without the other, it doesn't work. I can't not be spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, runs through me. But I also can't not be practical. Then I was like, wait a minute, workability, practical, which even comes first in the name of my business.
Right.
Connection. So the word mystic actually means connection to the divine.
Oh, wow. So that's like exactly your core
value. And then I had my numerology done, and what it said in my numerology is this person is meant to be a practical mystic.
Are you serious?
I was like, oh, I am so
aligned.
And the more that I am fully that, so the more my life works, and the more I'm connected to myself, to my source, because I am so spiritual, to my husband, to my children, to my closest people, my schedule is filled with people wanting to pay me.
Right.
Every time one of those starts breaking down, business dries up. Because think about it, for those of you listening, you're basically claiming in the world that you are something. And when that claim is not true, it feels like it's off. And people may not know exactly why, but they just know they don't want to work with you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like, I don't know. I mean, she or he is putting themselves out there like this is what they offer. But it's not congruent. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an offness about that. So really, you've got to find the right ones. You can't be someone who's saying, my core value is authenticity, but you're full of shit.
Right.
You're kind of got that con man energy. Look, maybe your core value is opportunity. There's no shame. It doesn't have to be authenticity, but don't claim it's something it isn't.
Right.
So this goes into your business too. So for people that are entrepreneurs, if your business's core values are aligned with yours, you are really on track. Now, say like you're a CEO of a massive business and you have all these employees and you sell a product or something.
Mm-hmm.
You will still be wanting to do business from a place of your own core values. However, your business itself has core values.
Oh, okay.
So let's say I'm selling a product and that product's it's like sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
right? Fun.
Right.
So you would want to be clear also with what your company's core values are. And then that's what you would use in marketing, branding, right? And then here's the piece, you have to stay aligned with that.
Right.
The company itself has to embody those values. So we've all seen it. We've all seen a company that is like, our core value is family. And then they do all this stuff that you're like, it isn't. And y'all are gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are someone who owns a business, whether that's a product-based business or a service-based business, look into what your core values of your company. Now, for some people, they're exactly the same, and that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's the case for me. I was going to say a one-woman show, but that's not true. My husband does all the tech, all the everything, right? So he really helps, but, technically,
Right.
it's just me. So my company's values are the exact same as mine.
Oh, sorry.
Bless you. So, but when I look at my brothers who own Grip 6 and sell,
Mm-hmm.
they sell belts and wallets and socks, they all have their different core values,
Mm-hmm.
but the business itself, one of the main things Grip 6 says is made in America, made in-house.
Yeah.
And boy, do they live up to that. They promise that and they 100% deliver on that.
Right.
And it's something that's very important to them personally. They're patriots, they love our country, they want our economy to thrive, and they do everything in their power to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of their main marketing points, and they're completely aligned.
That's cool. That's really cool. And that makes a lot of sense too. I've been in companies where they change their core values like every 6 months. And it just, I mean, the idea behind it, I think they have the intentions of like, okay, let's, make this more exciting. Let's make this more fun for employees to come to. But it still gives this sense of like instability
and confusion.
Because it's right, and confusion because it's like, wait, so what's important to us, right? What's important to the business? So that makes so much sense that, and I think as, building a company or a business out, using that as a driving factor in the marketing messaging and in the way that you reach out to clients and how you find clients even.
This, it is everything.
Right.
I mean, it really is. It is the scaffolding for everything. If you are somebody who, let's say, connection is important, and then you take a job or do a business where connection's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be working by yourself all the time. It won't even matter what amazing company you build, you will stop. Right? You've got to take that into consideration. And also, again, if your core values of your company are different than your own, they still have to live side by side. You're going to have to really be very clear about what those are. Because core values never change in us, they should actually never change in your business. Expressions of them can be different.
Right.
But if you are out there in the world claiming, this is what we're doing here, what's driving that business?
Right.
So going back to Grip 6, just because it's the business I know best, I would guess, and probably be right, that, they are my brothers, that it would be sustainability, right? Economic growth for our country, so some type of patriotism, and then I would say simplicity. They love the minimalistic, the high quality. They're lasting, goes back to sustainability, but they're also very simple designs. So and from the beginning, they've been very clear about that. If now they were to change, they would lose millions of people who are also drawn to sustainability, simplicity, and patriotism.
Right. Yeah, because that's how they've built their audience.
That's right.
That's how they've built and attracted those types of people.
So I want you guys to hear this. When you change the core values of your business, you have just lost all the people that you pulled to you through those core values. So it's a big deal.
Right.
And if you want to keep relationships and romantic ones, friendships, and work connections or employees, understanding and fulfilling on their core values will change everything. And if you're willing to kind of do an inventory of your life and look at why you have left relationships and jobs, you will start to see what was threatened. When you notice yourself triggered, my first question when I get triggered is, which one of my core values was just pushed against?
Oh, wow.
And what needs to happen here? Have I outsourced a core value that really needs to be more external? Do I need to have a conversation, create a boundary, shift something I'm doing? And sometimes it can be these little shifts, but this is the context. It can be the smallest thing that can make the biggest difference. When my daughter, who's now in junior high, was in grade school, picking her up from school, for those of you with school-age children, it's like the worst part of the day. Not because I'm picking up my child, but because of the, I'm trying so hard not to swear on your podcast.
You can
but
swear.
Your cluster that is there. And I was like, I would dread it every single day. Here's this beautiful flowy day. I'm having coffee with my clients, I'm connecting, I'm creating workability, my whole life works. I go to pick up Trinity and instantly I'm unwell. Well, it's hitting against my workability.
Mm-hmm.
So I made one change. I said, every day you're going to walk to this other parking lot that's next to your school and I'm going to pick you up there. Life changing. That one dumb little thing changed the whole flow of my day. So there was no sticky part to my day.
Yeah.
So that may not matter to somebody else with different core values.
Mm-hmm.
But you knowing what your core values are, noticing when you're getting triggered, you're feeling unwell. And instead of just being like, well, everyone has to do this, you have to pick up your kid from school or whatever else it is, how do I shift this to be more honoring of what matters to me?
Right.
And don't argue with your core values. Claim them fully. But that brings me to the last point of this, unless you have other questions, which I know I'm doing all this talking. But it's a way to not judge others.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so I'm, as much as I hate to admit this, it's just true. I'm a naturally judgmental person. In fact, how I saw that workability was one of my core values is I had a friend say, I spent 3 hours looking for my 2-year-old swimsuit. Ooh, I was like, whoa.
Oh.
Everything about that sentence triggers me. Right? And I'm like, so a lot of times you guys can look at what you judge
Right.
in others to see what you care about.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Because I'm like, how can you live?
Right.
Swimsuits belong in one place.
Right.
I can find my 2008 taxes and you can't find your kid's swimsuit. I mean, this is the judgmental crap that goes through my head. Once I realized what this person's core values were,
Mm-hmm.
I never judged again.
Oh, wow.
Her number one is generosity.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she's literally the most generous person I've ever known.
Hmm.
Right? So she doesn't care about workability. Clearly.
Like, she does
But
not
she literally
care.
doesn't. You guys, not
Right.
everyone, we're all here playing different games.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So if we get that, especially with those people closest to us,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I don't care at all about security, but this person really deeply does. Okay, then what can I do to fulfill on that? Not in an inauthentic way, but in a way where we get that it matters to them like it matters to us.
Right.
And when this has been communicated, especially to your partner, what used to be a 4-day fight is a 1-sentence thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hey, babe, this is really hitting against my workability.
Right.
When I say that to Gideon, that whole world is present. I don't have to prove how upset I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know that thing we do where we're like, I'm so upset that I have to show them how upset I am and I got to get a little cry.
Right.
I don't have to do that. He gets it.
Right.
It's that one word that holds so much truth and power that now we're so gotten.
Yeah.
And it really does change everything practically overnight. So hearing all that, do you have any other questions about it?
That's amazing. And I think that this has been an incredible conversation to bring clarity, one, to, you know, the ways that we can find these core values within ourselves, but then also the importance of understanding the core values in the people that are around us. I think I do have other questions for you, but I want to save it for our next episode because I want to do a follow-up to this episode where we dig in a little bit deeper.
I would love to.
Great. Awesome.
I could literally talk about this every day for the rest of my life. It's so, and it never, I mean, it just gets juicier and juicier and deeper and more fulfilling, and such a formula for flourishing.
That's incredible. Yeah, it makes me so excited even to think about the way that you put that into perspective of, you know, the things that are important to me, like the impact and the autonomy and creativity, like those are, like, you know, if someone were to do something to affect that, I would be so offended, you know, and I have been. And so understanding that, like, and understanding that everyone has their own unique core values and it's on that same level, that really does put it into perspective so well, of like being more understanding and more forgiving.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
So
because
it's
when you
huge.
understand why they're doing that thing, and it makes perfect sense
Right.
with their core values, all of a sudden nobody's wrong.
Right.
You care about what you care about, they care about what they care about. It's all equally valid.
Right.
So even if it's something that seems kind of like stupid to you, when you really get how much it matters to them, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And that's so powerful. So powerful. That you're changing lives and changing families and changing businesses. You do incredible work.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I love every single second of it.
That's awesome. Well, Donnie, will you please take a second and tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to talk to you more?
Yes, so I'm a one-stop shop. So it's just DonnieAngel.com, and Donnie is DAWNI, and you can do everything from book a session. Right now I am having a huge special on my core values session, which I can do in person. If you live anywhere in the Salt Lake area, I kind of insist that it's in person.
It needs to be.
It needs to be, and I make really good coffee. And if you're not a coffee drinker, tea. That's something I probably should have mentioned at the beginning. I'm obsessed with coffee. It's like my entire life.
So you have a show called
I do
Coffee
have a
with
show.
Donnie.
I have a YouTube show called Coffee with Donnie. Or I can do it over the phone. I live on a mountain, so unfortunately I can't do Skype or FaceTime. Everything freezes
Right.
where I live, so we can do the phone. But you can also send me a message to get a quote on speaking to your business, your group. It doesn't have to be a business. I go speak to, women's groups, entrepreneurial groups, and I do have a special price for nonprofits.
Awesome.
So I want to throw that out there. I do keynote speeches. So you just send me basically an email from my site and say, this is what we're interested in. I get back to people within 24 hours with a quote, and I'm very, very good at the communication piece.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Donnie. I always love our conversations.
Ditto.
I love them. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.